everyone. I'm Abigail. This is Megan, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
Today we are joined by author and Newbery honor winner Joyce Sidman.
Miss Sidman has written many books, including We Are Branches, The Girl Who Drew Butterflies, Dear Tree Frog,
Before Morning, Hello Earth, Poems to Our Planet.
Miss Sidman has written the Newbery Honor Award winner, Dark Emperor, and Other Poems of the Night, plus much more.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's wonderful to be here.
When did you realize that your favorite type of writing was poetry?
That's a very good question. I think that I have been drawn to poetry my whole life. And my first poem I wrote when I was about your age, actually. It was about the snow. I was walking to school and I saw the sun come out, and I noticed for the first time that the snow was sparkling. Have you ever seen it do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought I had discovered something completely new, and it was so beautiful that I sat down. Well, I didn't sit down because I was walking to school, but in my head, I wrote a little rhyming poem about the snow. And I think that was when I realized there were all these amazing things around me, and I wanted to be able to capture them in words and in sort of a pared down version of that moment. So the sights and smells and sounds of that moment, to capture it. And I think that's what poetry does. So that's what I was drawn to right away.
Do you remember the snow poem you wrote?
I do. Yes, and it wasn't very good, but I will recite it to you.
Thank you.
Snow does sparkle on the ground when Mr. Sun shines down upon the snow so soft and white, so quickly falling down. And there's actually a fallacy in that poem, because the snow can't be coming down if Mr. Sun is out. So, it has problems, but that's okay. It started my career in poetry.
I think most people realize when they're reading a historical fiction book that probably a lot of research went into that. How much research goes into your poetry?
Actually, a lot of research goes into many of my books, most of my books, I would say, because I like to write about the natural world, and I want to represent it accurately to young people. And so, and also, research inspires me. I mean, the more I found out about geckos and the way their finger pads have these tiny little hairs that interact at a molecular level with the wall, and that's why they can climb up the wall. I mean, that's super cool. So that inspires me to write about them. So the research is not maybe my beginning place. My beginning place is wondering about something, but then the research really inspires the voices of the poems and the details.
I once wrote a poem that I really like. It's actually not serious at all, and I was pretty satisfied with it. But
good. Can you recite it to us?
It's pretty silly.
Well, so is mine. So
there once was a man named Sam. He met a girl named Pam. They went to France and pooped in their pants, and now they're on the lam.
They're on the lam because they pooped in their pants?
I guess. They're going away from France.
Okay. Well, rhyme is one of those things that we human beings just love. We love to have the sounds that sound the same. And I love to write rhyming poetry. But I also write a lot of free verse. And when I write in classrooms with children. And in fact, I have a class of 5th graders that I go to every year. And I encourage them not to rhyme, because you end up with more silly poems like the one you recited than poems that really speak from your heart. But there's a place for all kinds of poems, and I love the goofy ones.
Do you think poems are better when they're read aloud?
I think they're different. I think poems should be read aloud. I think they come alive when they're read aloud. But I think you need to write a poem and structure it on the page so that someone reading it silently will understand where the pauses are and what you want them to notice more. And I think that structure on the page, so the way you chop up the different lines, that helps the reader to understand the poem better. So I write it for both the on the page reader and the read out loud reader. And I always read my poems aloud when I'm working on them to see how they work.
Talk about the power of words and what we should know about that power.
I think words have a lot of power, and I think humans have always known that. And that's why we used to use words like chants and invocations, and we still do, mostly in religious settings, but also in political settings and at school. You know, we pledge allegiance to the flag, and all of those to me signify that words have power. And one of my favorite moments in the classroom when I'm writing with children, and they always think that they can't write poetry and they're bad at it. But when they realize that it's not as formal as other writing and they actually can do it a lot better than they thought. And when one of those kids who maybe doesn't believe in himself or herself gets up and reads her poem and the whole class goes silent when they're listening to it, I think that's a moment when the author, the poet, can realize the power that they have in their words and that they're really speaking from their heart, and they are communicating something important to other people. It's sort of the quality of the silence of your audience when you're reading makes a lot of difference to a poet.
Do you think poetry can be easier for kids because we don't have to follow all the grammar rules?
I do. And I will say, and to you, and I also say this to my classrooms, that you don't have to follow grammatical rules. In particular, you don't have to punctuate or capitalize your letters. The only rule is that the reader has to understand what you're saying. So if you write one continuous long sentence, that might be difficult for the reader. So you have to, if you don't use punctuation, you have to chop up your lines so that people can tell when there's a pause. And you don't have to write complete sentences either, which is less daunting than some other types of writing.
The authors we've spoken with have told us they write their books out of order.
What about with a poem? Do you ever know the end to a poem before the middle or the beginning?
Or do you
I
always
do.
put it together in order?
I don't always put it together in order. In fact, sometimes a phrase will come to me and I'll realize it's what I want to build to in the poem instead of how I want to begin the poem. That happened with my poem in Dark Emperor about, I don't have it right here with me, the tree poem. And I got the last line of it as I was walking through the woods and looking up the trees. And in order to remember it, I had to chant it all the way home, because I have this superstitious feeling that if I carry a notebook with me, I won't get the ideas. I don't know why I feel that way, but I don't carry a notebook with me. So if a phrase comes into my head, I have to chant it all the way home.
Speaking of trees, you are a very outdoorsy person. How does that impact your writing?
I think it's really everything to me. It's my subject matter. It's the way I calm myself down. It's the way I think when I walk along, I think. And I would be completely lost without the natural world. And that's why I would find it hard to live in a city, I think.
Yeah. Rejection is a part of most writers' stories. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Sure. I had a lot of rejection at first, especially after I decided to focus on children's literature. And before I started writing children's poetry, even though I had been writing adult poetry, I tried other things. I tried a novel and I tried stories, and some of the stories I sold to magazines like Cricket. But it wasn't until I met my future editor at a literary party and talked to her about my love of poetry, and she encouraged me to send her some, that I really started realizing that I could combine children's literature with poetry. But it took me 10 years, honestly, to publish a book. So there was a lot of rejection, and I just had to keep going.
We have interviewed a number of authors who've had books banned.
This means in some parts of the country, kids don't have the same access to books that we have and may not be able to see people like themselves represented in books or a window into others' lives.
Can you give us your thoughts on this?
I can. And I think one of the exciting things that is happening now in children's literature is the We Need Diverse Books movement, which is not that old. And I've watched it grow. And to me, that is something that's truly thrilling, and that all different kinds of people children are seeing themselves in books in all different kind of ways, not just focused on their own culture, but just being there in the story. And I think it's one of the most exciting things that's happened to children's literature. And I love to see it happen. I love to see friends of mine who are getting their books published who didn't have luck beforehand. And I hate that it's banning books. Sometimes it means banning books, but in a sense, book bans almost give us more energy to fight and shine a spotlight on the problem of people accepting books with all kinds of people in them.
We agree. Can you tell us where you were and the exact details of when you found out you won a Newbery honor?
Yeah, that was one of the most amazing moments of my life. My editor had told me that it was a possibility. So, all of us children's book creators know when those awards are going to be announced. I mean, some of us forget it, and some of us honestly, might not even know. But I knew, and I knew the morning, and I knew that it was in the East Coast, maybe. So it was going to be super early for me in Central Time. So, I got up, I had my coffee. I was supposed to have lunch with somebody. I kind of noodled around, and I thought, yeah, maybe there'll be a phone call, probably not. Finally, I gave up. I went into the shower. When I came out, there's a message on the machine, right? So I press the button, and I hear the chairwoman say that she was there with the rest of the Newbery committee. And it was like, actually, no. Yeah, I listened to the message, and that was the moment when I realized this was the Newbery committee calling me. So I called back, and when they told me, it was kind of like the floor fell out from under me. And I don't know, it was an incredible moment, and they were all so wonderful. They were all cheering me on. I was crying, and it was great.
What writers have had the most influence on your work?
Well, that's hard to say. I think the book that had a big impact on me when I was young was this book, The Bat Poet by Randall Jarrell. And have you ever seen this book?
No.
I don't think it's in libraries as much anymore, but it's about a bat who decides to stay up during the daytime because it looks so interesting to him. And it's part prose and part poetry. And he begins to write poems about what he sees in the daytime. And it just opened up this window for me, and it made me think about noticing things in the world and writing poetry about them.
What advice do you have for young writers?
I think for young writers, it's just important to take a moment out of your day and set down your thoughts or things that you've noticed and play around with words when you're describing it. Read books that you love. Share writing with people you trust. If you love writing and you want to write every day, or you want to write a lot, or you want to write, in the evening under your covers, make sure you show somebody that. Maybe even read it out loud to them. So I guess I would say just write as much as you can. And if you don't have time to write, know that you can write at any time in your life. You can become a writer when you're 80. You can become a writer when you're 5. And share that writing with people you trust. And if you share it with somebody who doesn't really give it the attention that it deserves, then don't share it with that person anymore. Find another one. But it's sharing. Writing is important, reading is important, and sharing, I believe, is important.
Can you tell us about a project you are working on now?
Well, I will tell you about a project I'm working on now. I was lucky enough to go to Mexico last year to a little lagoon in Baja where gray whales have their babies. And so I got to see these mama whales that were very big and the baby whales that were near them. And they are pretty friendly whales, and they will come up to small boats and come alongside them and then spout all over you. And it was just such an amazing, amazing trip to see those whales and learn all about that lagoon and about how the calves are raised by their mom. And then they leave on this huge, long, over 1,000-mile migration up to Alaska to feed. And I just knew I needed to write about a whale calf. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to write the story in poems of that whale calf whose name is Luna, and what her life is like in that lagoon, and how she prepares herself for that migration.
Luna Lagoon sounds like a good title of a poem.
Okay. Luna Lagoon. I like that too. Those ooh sounds.
Yeah. Finally, it's time for our Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire
Oh
questions.
my
Are
goodness.
you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, number 1. What's your favorite phrase, Teeth?
Good grief.
Number 2. What is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Whales.
Number 3. What is your go-to snack food?
Chocolate chips and nuts together
Number
in a
4.
little bowl.
What was your favorite book growing up?
Oh, the one I showed you, Bat Poet by Randall Jarrell.
Number 5. If you could teleport somewhere right now, where do you go?
I would teleport myself to Chicago to see my new grandson.
Then that's where we are. That's where we are.
You're in Chicago?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I wish I were there. It looks like a nice day.
It is pretty
Yeah.
nice. It's not too
Except-
cold, not too hot.
And windy, a little.
A little. Okay.
Number 6. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
You know, I thought a lot about this, but I think flying, I would really love to be able to fly.
Number 7. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Peanuts. You can probably tell by the good grief.
Number 8. What was your favorite rainy day activity?
I love to bake cookies, chocolate chip cookies.
Number 9. If you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
I thought a lot about this one too. I would like to meet Harriet Tubman and, of course, Maria Marion, because I wrote about her. And then I think Mary Oliver, the poet Mary Oliver.
Number 10. What was the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Be kind. Even if you don't agree with the person in front of you, be kind.
You were amazing. Thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
Oh, well, thank you. And I had a blast with you too. I just think I love this program, and I think you do a great job.